National Book Award finalist. Folks, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do, but I am quite sure I'm going to enjoy it. All right. Darlin' Deb and Catfish Jim.
Thank you. Good evening. Thanks for sticking around for a little bit of storytelling through music and words. And thank you to all of you at Lena's for inviting us. This is really different and new for us too, and we're going to have a really good time. That song you just heard is one of Jim's. It's called Leap of Heart. And do you want to say something about it?
Yeah, hello? That was one of my songs off of one of my records. I don't remember which one, I think. Piano Story, I think. The title is Leap of Heart, and I hope it invites you to take a leap of heart.
Okay.
Do something that you've been afraid of.
Oh, I do that every day. Anyway, tonight we want to tell you a story about art and music and words and love. And you could call it a love story, and maybe it's your love story, because we all have one, or two, or 10. Exactly. And there are all kinds of love stories. And our hope is that something tonight in our stories connects with you and your story, whether it's a person, a time and a place, or the art that lives in you and that expresses itself through you. Because this is a story about the geography of the heart. And as we know, the heart has many, many, many different languages and shapes and shadings, and it can hold a multitude of stories within one beautiful, steady beat. So Jim and I, to tell you a little bit about us, we met in Charleston, South Carolina in 1969. Our mutual friend, Jimmy Murphy, who lived down the street, and picked me up for high school every morning in his spiffy two-door blue metallic Corvair. Asked me one morning, "Do you mind if we pick up my friend Jim?" And I said, sure. I didn't mind. And when we pulled up to Jim's house and the front door opened, out stepped the tallest boy I had ever seen. And the best dressed, too. Thank you, Mrs. Pearce. He loped to the car with these long legs and size 14 wingtip shoes, Sunday school slacks, short-sleeved white Oxford shirt, manicured hair, enormous teeth, dark, happy eyes, and lips so red and so full I thought they were bruised. He carried a trombone case under one arm, and with the other arm he clutched a notebook to his chest, and papers spilled out of it like little wrinkled clouds, and he left them there in their wake. And I blinked at this balancing act as I opened the passenger side door, slid out of the seat, and swung myself around into the back, and watched him fold himself into the car. His eyes were huge, his lips were full, his hands were gigantic, and I had one thought: I'm going to marry that guy. Okay, maybe not that thought. Maybe I just wanted to kiss those lips. And you know what I did? Only not that day. Not on that day. That day we pulled up to school and there was a huge conflagration in the front yard of the school. Big protest signs saying Jesus had long hair, and all the boys were holding these signs and all the girls were cheering them on because they wanted to wear shorter skirts and they didn't like the dress code, and I wanted to wear shorter skirts too. And eventually I did. And one day Jim's hair would be as long as it was halfway down his back at one point. But in 1969, we were still held captive to our very Southern and very military and very strict families. Jim's dad was retired Navy, and my dad was a pilot in the United States Air Force flying missions into and out of Vietnam in 1969. And for that year, Jim and I were inseparable. I tutored him in algebra.
I didn't learn anything about algebra.
And I babysat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I snuck in to see you, too.
He would leap fences, he said. He would fend off barking dogs to come to my babysitting jobs late at night. We went on dates. 1969 was a good year for movies, and we saw Easy Rider, even though my dad said I wasn't allowed to go because even he would not give Peter Fonda $3 of his money to watch one of his movies. And we saw Goodbye, Mr. Chips. We saw Romeo and Juliet. It was a good year for making out in the back of the movies. And that was one of our superpowers, making out. And I got to kiss those lips at that point. Once we were parked in his father's big, long car out in the back of a brand new subdivision being built for homes, for new homes. And it was pitch dark when the police rolled up behind us and spotlighted us, checked our IDs, and mercifully let us go. But he made me laugh, and he brought me words like dirge and nuance. And he would come play the piano at my house, something jazzy. And I remember him playing Sunny by Bobby Hebb, and it was so jazzy and so amazing that my mother came wandering out of the kitchen, drying her hands on her kitchen towel to watch and listen. So I knew then that trombone might have been his band gig, or sousaphone if you were marching, but the piano was his gift. And so he wrote me songs. And we would sit on Nat Island, named by him, a little stretch of sandbar at the end of the street where I lived that was full of you-know-what. And he would tell me his stories, and I would tell him my stories. And over the years, what I have learned is that stories are the things we tell one another about our lives and about who we are or who we hope to be. And they become part of the history of our days. They become part of our geography. In 1970, my dad was assigned to the 604th Military Airlift Squadron at Clark Air Base in the Philippines. And so that summer, we moved. And Jim had just graduated high school. On his graduation night, he gave me a watch that doubled as a, one of those ID bracelets, remember those? And he gave me an album, the new Beatles album, Let It Be. And that was my gift for his graduation. He went to Furman University in Greenville, South Carolina, and I spent my senior year at Wagner High School at Clark Air Base. And we wrote letters, but they took forever to go across the ocean, half a world away, and phone calls were too expensive to even dream about. But he came to see me that next summer in Mississippi, where my parents had deposited me for college. But life happened as it does, and maybe as it must. And we didn't see each other again for 30 years. Our shorthand now for those 30 years is, he wanted his music, and I wanted a family. And that's very true. But there's more truth than that. And there can always be more than one truth, right? Always can be more than one truth. So let's just fast forward 30 years to 2001. And I'd been living in Frederick, Maryland, outside of DC, in the same house for 25 years, where I raised a family of 4 amazing kids, some of whom are here tonight, and who were grown at that point, or nearly so, and each was making a life of their own. And I was beginning a new chapter myself, a new career as a writer of books for young readers, and I had 2 books that were just making their way out into the world. And I began, I don't know, I think the best way to say it is that I just had a broken-hearted time. It was the end of a long marriage, the deaths of both my parents, the looming end of one way of life and a home place that I had loved so much. And yet, I was learning slowly that I could do this solo gig on my own and that I could also thrive. So it was a brand new life for me, although I was having a terrible, terrible time trying to write anything worth reading. And so I didn't. I quit writing. And I found comfort in old, familiar music, the kind that knows your story. The kids had given me a Beatles 1 CD for Christmas the year before, and I put it on again. And the last song on that CD is The Long and Winding Road. And it had been our song, Jim's and mine, one of them, so long ago. And it made me think of him, but not in any romantic way. I thought of him affectionately because we had had a lot of fun, and I remembered that time from so long ago. And I was sure that he had become a band director, happily married with 6 kids, and I'd never dream of disturbing a life like that, not when mine had already been so thoroughly upended. But in this new life that I was building, I was curious. So I dared to ask after him. And the way I did this was, well, it just turns out that Jim had just gotten a desktop computer and email. And even a website, thanks to Cindy, his friend Cindy. So finding him was simple. I could just take Google and put Jim Pearce Jazz, because I figured if he was alive, he would be doing something with his piano and with jazz that he loves so much. And there he was. So I dashed off an email. I didn't even think twice. I didn't sign it, although, you know, it comes into your inbox. It says Deborah Wiles. So I just said, we're getting the team back together, I wrote. I don't know if you remember the glory days of the Pine Bark Canards versus the Weston Dirges, and you were a terrible basketball player, driveway basketball player. But we're getting the team back together. Know where any of the players are? Something silly like that. It was just silly. And I sent it off. I wrote nonsense, just a paragraph, wondering where he was. And he knew exactly who I was. The next day, to my shock, he had answered this email. Hello, Debbie Wiles, formerly Edwards. I'm sitting here shaking. How did you find me? And then, Without knowing me at all, he added, "You may not know this, but you seem to possess some literary talent." Well, I was smitten, and I was terrified. I had been married once for a very long time, and I was determinedly a single woman. I wasn't looking for romance. I'd just been curious. Right? Right? Yeah, that's what I told myself. It turns out that Jim had looked for me the year before on the Tucker Library computer before he had his own, but he didn't know my married name and he struck out. It took a year for that unsent message from Jim to reach me. And then I reached back. And we began this intense email correspondence. He sent long notes about Ken Wilber and the 4 quadrants, the life of a working musician. He asked if I had a yoga practice. I sent stories about my kids, my garden, the life of a working writer, and how years after the publication of my first 2 books, I still couldn't seem to write anything that mattered. And he signed every email, Shanti, 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 peace, 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 followed by his phone number. And when I finally got up the nerve to call him, I woke him up. I thought, he's a musician, he's up really late at night. No, he's in bed at 9:30. "I'm so sorry," I said, "I can call you another time." And he said immediately, "I haven't talked to you in 30 years, don't hang up." He started sending me homemade brochures about visiting Atlanta. The return address was always Tucker Adventure Travel. So finally I bought a plane ticket and I flew from BWI to Atlanta for the day. It was mid-December, and he was waiting at the top of that long escalator at the Atlanta airport. Same long legs, same long arms, big lips, deep brown eyes, a big happy smile, a long hug, and he felt like home. So after a sunshiny, warm December day that included a walk up Stone Mountain, a dusky drive down Snowflake Lane, homemade spaghetti, Jim's signature dish, and lots and lots and lots of talk, and maybe a little kissing, Jim started noodling on the keyboard, and I could tell he was composing. "That's a waltz," I said. "Are you making it up?" "Yes," he said. "What will you call it?" I asked. 30-year waltz, he said. that also the name of the first album?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so. So the album is called 30-Year Waltz as well. And there were many, 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 many songs that started pouring out of Jim. He drove me back to the airport that night, and we rode mostly in silence. And finally, I said, I just can't believe that after all these years, you've never married, you've never had kids. And he said simply, I waited for you. I know. And I thought, who is this guy? You know, really, who does that? And I mean, we're talking art here. We're talking, you did say that. But it was highly emotional night. But really, no regrets. You know, no regrets. The paths we traveled before that day were necessary roads. Good roads. Even when they weren't good roads, they were good roads. And I wouldn't trade a day of them for anything. We're grateful for every step that brought us here, the good times, the bad times, the heartache, the triumphs, and everything in between. Grateful for the lives we've lived, the gifts they've given us, and the years that we've shared since 2001 with our families and our friends. And when I moved to Atlanta 3 years later, it was a real leap of heart for both of us, and I think that song came out of that. Anyway, at the same time that Jim started writing songs again, I started writing again too. And the book I finished as I moved to Atlanta, published in 2005, was this one, Each Little Bird That Sings. And it's about a family that lives above a funeral home in a small Mississippi town and all their adventures there. I named the little girl Comfort because I needed so much comfort myself when I started this book. It's a story about loss and grief and heartbreak, but one that will also make you laugh. As Uncle Edisto says, open your arms to life, let it strut into your heart in all its messy glory. Comfort writes life notices instead of obituaries, and she makes up her own rules for attending funerals. Top 10 tips for first-rate funeral behavior. Number 1, you don't have to wear black to a funeral. Any old color is fine, just don't wear a wedding dress or your torn shorts. No bare feet or flip-flops. Comb your hair. The deceased, a fancy word for the person who died, will wear more makeup than all the mourners combined. So if you run out of time getting ready to come to the funeral, don't worry about makeup. Number 6, take all arguments and fistfights outside to the parking lot. Number 9, bring a covered dish of food with you to the funeral home. At Snowburgers, there's always a covered dish dinner back at the funeral home after the graveside service. Favorite dishes are chicken casseroles, Jell-O molds of all colors and descriptions, anything with mandarin oranges in it, Vienna sausage and rich cracker trays, pimento cheese sandwiches cut into triangles, and dog treats for dismay. Number 10, remember that death is a natural thing. It's all around us, as Edisto Snowburger always said. Don't try to hide death from kids. If Grandpa has died, don't say, we lost Grandpa, because kids will want to know why you don't go look for him. Just say, Grandpa died. Don't say, Grandpa passed either, because we'll wonder what grade was he in. Just say he died. We get it. Kids are better at death than grown-ups give them credit for, unless the kid is Peach Sugars. Discourage Peach Sugars from coming to your funeral. Discourage Peach Sugars from visiting Snapfinger, Mississippi. Discourage Peach, period. This book is dedicated to my long-suffering editor at Harcourt Brace and to Jim, to Liz Van Doren, who stood vigil through the long wordless night, and to Jim Pearce, who sang to me in the morning. Jim called our long honeymoon, those 7 years before we married, learning how to love. We are still learning how to love, and aren't we all? Aren't we all? Yeah, aren't we all? He got to know those we call our children now, and our grandchildren, and they got to know him. We're all still learning how to love and get to know each other. And Jim and I sailed into some rich, creative years, both of us writing his songs, my books, sometimes writing songs together. So Jim has released several albums, all while working hundreds of gigs all over Atlanta for decades, like Willie B's Gorilla Funeral at the Zoo, music to accompany runway models for a corporate company's new faucet line rollout, countless restaurants, rehearsal dinners, weddings, funerals, church services. He wrote and recorded funny songs like Sasquatch is Falling in Love. Even big monsters love music. I hates to leaves ya, but I gots to went. And his signature song, which I think was mentioned, I'm in the twilight of a mediocre career.
That's very true. I'm in the twilight of a mediocre career. No screaming fans, yet I persevere. My songs are not sung by millions of teens. My face doesn't grace the hip magazines. $50 gigs, oh, I've had my share. Back in the day, I even had hair. So write your request on the back of the tin. I play that old song over and over again. I'm in the twilight of a mediocre career. Don't make much money to these rules I adhere. Won't work for food, exposure, or beer. I'm in the twilight of a mediocre career. Don't ride to gigs in a limo, man. I drive myself in a broken down van, playing for folks as they chew on food. Soft tinkling music for setting the mood. No groupies throwing keys or braziers. Could have been worse. Please don't shed tears. My mother said, be an engineer. I didn't listen, so I wound up here. I'm in the twilight of a mediocre career. Don't make much money, but to these rules I adhere. Won't work for food, exposure, or beer. I'm in the twilight of a mediocre career. True story. Thanks.
Okay. And sometimes, are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes Jim wrote songs for me. This was a present for me several years ago now, Debbie's birthday song. Thank you. Meanwhile, I kept writing stories set in Mississippi and my childhood summers. Everything I write comes out of my life. I turn it into stories. Freedom Summer and 4 novels, Love Ruby Lavender, Each Little Bird That Sings, The Aurora County All-Stars, A Long Line of Cakes. And then I turned my attention to the 60s, my childhood, as everything I write comes out of my life. So I created a trilogy of documentary novels. And in these novels, they are stories that are woven through with scrapbook sections that have pictures, photographs, song lyrics, newspaper clippings, all the ephemera of the time that the book is set. Countdown is 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, Revolution is 1964, and the Civil Rights Movement, and this book, Anthem, is 1969. I also wrote a novel in verse, Kent State, about May 4th, 1970, when the National Guard opened fire on protesting students and wounded 9, killed 4. And Jim was contracted by my publisher, to write the music for the audiobooks. The audiobooks are amazing. And Jim wrote sounds like tunes for every tune that I put in the books. So I chose protest songs for Kent State. So Jim wrote sound likes for War, I Ain't Marching Anymore, Country Joe's I Feel Like I'm Fixing to Die Rag, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, Eva Destruction, and of course, Ohio. And I chose 47 folk, funk, R&B, and rock and roll songs for Anthem, 1 to anchor each chapter. And Jim wrote sound-alikes for Spinning Wheel and The Weight and Ain't No Mountain High Enough, and the song that ends the book, Simon and Garfunkel's America. And the last line, of course, is they've all gone to look for America. I became very political as I began to write these books. Not that I hadn't been before, but much more vocally and in literature that way, especially Kent State and the new book I'm writing about the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia. But Anthem takes place in 1969 when 2 teenage cousins, Molly and Norman, in Charleston, South Carolina, take an old school bus and drive it across the country to find Molly's brother, Norman's cousin, in San Francisco. Molly is a free-spirited romantic in love with the association, and rule follower Norman wants to escape Charleston and become a famous rock drummer. In chapter 2, he is listening to In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida, The Proper Way, lying on the floor with his head next to the speakers. Like we did, right? This book is for adults and for young adults. These kids fight all the way across the country while they discover the musical tapestry that was America in 1969. From Charleston, they stop in Macon, where the Allman Brothers are putting together a band. They stay overnight with Maiden Aunts in Atlanta. They cruise the Strip. They make a stop at Muscle Shoals. They see Elvis in Memphis, Garth Brooks in Oklahoma, very young, 12 years old. Hippies in New Buffalo and New Mexico, the Wrecking Crew in Los Angeles, David Crosby, Mama Cash, Graham Nash writing Our House for Joni Mitchell in Laurel Canyon, and finally, the Association at the Troubadour with Molly's favorite, Terry Kirkman. The Charleston section was such a pleasure to write because I remember it so well because that was our year, and because the pieces of it that I researched were so much fun to go back to our high school and do all kinds of other good things that we did in Charleston, kissing. And but what I want to read to you tonight, and what some of you might be familiar with, is from the chapter where Molly and Norman encounter the Strip. And I probably don't need to tell you what that is, correct? In this room? Probably not. Many thanks to Jerry Brunner, Tommy Archibald, and many others, I think Ron Hipp too, for their help with my research when they volunteered memories of going downtown in Atlanta to those blocks between 10th and 14th, was it? Yeah, in 1969. This is chapter 11, Within You, Without You, written by George Harrison, performed by George Harrison and the Asian Music Circle, recorded at EMI Abbey Road Studios, London, England, 1967, tabla percussion, not Warsoni. By the time they left the aunt's house, all four of them together, it was close to summer dark, almost 9 p.m. 14th Street was littered with young people wandering from Piedmont Park on one end of the strip to the other. Marvin pointed out landmarks on the way. "That's the Twin Mansions," he said. "The French consulate was there, but they moved out, so freaks crash there now at the columns." "And that," he said, pointing, "that's the Black Panther headquarters." "Really?" said Norman. "I think he is misinformed," said Lucy. "I thought these houses were castles when I was a kid," said Molly, the first word she had spoken since leaving the kitchen. "Now they all look like they're falling apart." She had wordlessly vacated her Queen Anne chair and followed them out the door. It had been that simple. "The neighborhood's changing," Lucy explained. "That's why we're all camped out here. The rent's cheap." Lucy now tinkled when she walked. She had tiny bells on her lace-up sandals and bracelets on each arm. She walked way too close to Norman for Molly's comfort, so Molly parted them silently with her arms like a chaperone at a school dance. Then she stepped between them and walked ahead and made her point. They rounded the corner at 14th and were officially on the strip, the blocks of Peachtree Street between 8th and 16th. It was dusk. The river of humanity that flowed along the sidewalks on Peachtree crested over Norman and Molly. Norman, senses already on overload, instinctively grabbed Molly's hand so they wouldn't get separated. Molly grabbed back and took a deep breath as they entered another world. She opened her eyes wide to take it all in. "This way," sang Lucy, as Marvin grabbed her hand and she grabbed Norman's other hand, and the four of them snaked around bodies wearing beads and bracelets and braids, bodies in bell-bottoms, bandanas, and flowered shirts and skirts, bodies nodding, laughing, smoking, singing, selling all manner of goods, including the great speckled bird. Norman shouted that he wanted to buy a new copy, but Marvin yelled, "Let it go, man. They'll be in the park tomorrow. Come on, Ziggy." Marvin was a different person on the strip. He was open and light-filled, waving his free arm in front of them like he was leading them off to Oz to see the wizard. Norman hauled her past the Hare Krishnas dancing and shaking their tambourines and selling incense for 10 cents a stick, next to the boys with hair to their waists who played bongos on the curb, and a harmonium player, or was it a sitar? Molly didn't know either instrument, who sat with the Krishnas and played the same 6 notes over and over again, their heads bobbing and warbling to some invisible scene within them. The last wash of daylight created warm golden shadows that blanketed the beat. The air surrounding them was flowery and sweet and laced with the smell of sweat and singed leaves. Beards and bare feet, sandals and suspenders, headbands and felt hats, bodies, including theirs, weaved and waved in time to some different kind of rhythm, a rhythm that enveloped them and lifted them into a place not of this world, a rhythm pulsating within them and without them, everywhere. I should hate this, Molly thought, but she didn't. I should be afraid, but she wasn't. She couldn't resist the energy. She felt pulled along like a thread in a tapestry. And now, suddenly and surprisingly, she was in it, right in the middle of it, whatever it was. She was here, now. There was a great vitality here that propelled her along on its own dedicated highway. Her carefully cinched heart began to open like the softest, loveliest lotus flower. She could feel its insistent beat within her 14-year-old chest. It's been so long since I felt something. She forgot about her old trip and began a new one. She closed her eyes and bumped shoulders, hips, arms with the great wash as her guides pulled her past a leather shop with its heady smells, past a record shop plastered with posters announcing local bands and concerts, and into a shop decorated in wind chimes and pendants, peace signs, and paper flowers. Lucy dresses Molly. I'm skipping right there to where Norman bought a pair of sandals. They were 2 sizes too small. but the largest size they had. Marvin talked him into them. You can't wear church shoes on the strip, man, or anywhere. It's not cool. So your heels hit the pavement, no biggie. Norman looked at his gigantic feet. They were very white. Groovy was all he could think to say. Marvin laughed. Nobody says groovy anymore, Norman. Norman tucked his wingtips under his arm, and Marvin cast a thoughtful look at Norman's long feet. Really, man, you should just go barefoot. Groovy, Norman repeated, and he wiggled his toes in his short shoes. At 10th Street, they waded past a gaggle of Atlanta City police who were using bullhorns to remind the crowds of the 11 p.m. curfew. Bikers congregated at the parking lot on the corner, revving their motorcycle engines and creeping closer to the police. It looked like a confrontation was brewing. They hate us, said Lucy. Turn right, said Marvin. The crowd thinned as they got onto a side street. I know this neighborhood. I used to crash here sometimes before I met your aunts. Then a tall, barefoot boy with an enormous afro, striped pajama bottoms, and no shirt or shoes came toward them on the sidewalk. Hey, what's happening, Superman? Said Marvin. Hey, Marvin Gardens. Hey, man. Marvin Gardens, said an incredulous Norman. Your name is Marvin Gardens? Marvin laughed as he embraced Superman. Then he grinned at Norman. You don't think anybody here goes by his real name, do you, man? But Marvin Gardens, that's Monopoly. That's my name, said Marvin. Then addressing Superman. What happened to your cape, man? My old lady took it, said Superman. She saw me looking at Frida Kahlo, and she took away my superpowers. Bummer, man. No sweat, said Superman. I'll get 'em back. Lois Lane can't resist Superman. I'll stop there. Okay. They're heading to, what is it on 10th Street? The 12th gate. Very good. Thank you. They're heading there. All right. So we're about done. We have one last song for you tonight, and I'm going to let Jim introduce it along with our good friend, Philip Rogers. So I'm going to sit down and let the two of you go to work, and then I have one more thing to tell you before you run out, and we'll be done. How's that? Sound good?
We're going to do a song called Here I Am Dreaming Rainbows. It's about love, how you go from the very beginning of it, like when you're young, you know, a lot of romance and fun stuff, but it changes as you get old, as Steve's songs kind of touched on that. Are you still here, Steve? I think his songs touched on that what happens, that song about the first dance, yeah, or something. Anyway, at the end it's different, and you get old, you get wrinkled, and it changes, but the love actually is, I don't know if I would say better, but it's different. It might be better. It's certainly not as, you're not as excitable as you once were. But we're going to... All right, I'm going to quit talking now before I hang myself. We're going to get my friend here, Philip Rogers here. We have a church gig we've had for about 5 or 6 years. This guy is a fantastic singer. This song's only been performed once now in public, and he sang it. And as you heard me sing before, I have sort of a novelty voice, but this song requires a really good, solid singer. So, Philip
wrote it together.
And me, oh yeah, Debbie wrote. She wrote all the words, I think.
I did?
Yeah, I think you did. Here I am. Well, I had the title. Did I have the title?
Play the song.
All right, we'll play the song. We'll do what we do best.
Are you ready? Are you ready?
I just need to say this. Working with Jim is a joy. You never know what you're going to get. And he always makes me laugh. So, anyway, I enjoyed this song.
It's all right. You ready for it?
Yeah. Here I am, dreaming rainbows, Valentines and sleepy afternoons. conjuring the perfect lover, polite, erudite, loves Gershwin tunes. And there you are, chasing rainbows, laughing at my jokes, you even sing, promising forever after. We're puppets on love strings, but the noon of our romance brings a tangled song and dance. The verses don't rhyme and the words disagree, and the thundering clouds open up off key. Love is rain, it ain't rainbows, but distant dreams and houses made of sand. Storms have washed away the roses, the romance, the band. But the promises we made are the valentines of age, to bring back romance, kiss perfection goodbye, fall in love with a dance we can only try. Look at us, catching rainbows, gathering a sunny second chance, shining lovers ever after. May I have this
Wow. Thank you. That's amazing.
It's always fun.
It's amazing. Both of you are amazing. Now I've lost my place. But I'm going to get it back. Hold on. I have one last thing I want to say. And let me find it. I said a lot of things, didn't I? Okay. And that brings us to today, which is the joy of getting to know this folky community that we've gotten to know over the years. I've been here 21 years now. Jim and I got married in 2007, I think it was. And for letting us bring a little jazz into the room tonight. We loved and have loved hearing y'all play over the years at Lena's and in other venues and in our home and in your homes. And what we know is that the music, the stories, and the history we share is so much bigger than a couple of kids who met as teenagers, went off to build full lives, met again, and created new lives, folding in our old lives, all of a piece in the end, because it's the life that we all create together in community with our loved ones, including all of mine sitting back there, with our common purpose, and with our common geography, which is the geography of the heart. So Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace. And thank you all so much.
Catfish, Jim, and Darling Deb. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Drive home safely, and we look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you very much.